Hello, everyone. Quick heads up before we start today's episode. The Global Agile Summit is happening on May the 4th. Yes, May the 4th, and even with a big blowout Star Wars party, you have to join. It will be online, and it's, like always, free to attend. We have 4 tracks this year that I'm really excited about, and I think you will too. Stick around to the end of the episode to know what they are. If you want to check it out already now, you can check it out at bit.ly/Global Agile 26. That's the numerals 2 and 6 at the end. So one more time, that's bit.ly/Global Agile 26. All one word, all lowercase, and 2 and 6 are the numerals 2 and 6. So stick around till the end of the episode and I'll tell you what's in store. But for now, on to today's episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a very special bonus episode with a previous guest of the show, Natalia Curusi. Hey, Natalia. Welcome back.
Hello. Hello, Vasco. Very happy to see you again.
So, everybody, you can listen to Natalia's other episodes and learn a little bit more about her background and the kind of teams and projects she works with. The link is in the show notes. But today, we're here to talk about the book that she co-authored. The book is titled From Resistance to Resilience, Practical Agile Lessons for Transformation. Now, most Agile books tell you what to do. And this one is more of a first-person account of what actually happens. Friday night deployments, dream teams that started to self-destruct, transformations that met a wall of silence. Natalia has lived through many of these stories herself with her co-author as well. And today she shares the lessons inside those stories. So, Natalia, in the book you describe starting your career in 2003, having long days, Friday night deployments, running scripts directly in the production server. That's a world a lot of our listeners will recognize and unfortunately still happening in many organizations today. But what was the moment where you realized that, hey, wait a minute, there has to be a better, different way of working?
Yeah, so very good question. And I think we touched base a little bit with topic last time when we discussed in one of our episodes. I consider myself a very people-oriented person. Even some of the people may not consider me like that. Because you need to know a person a little bit more time in order to understand what is the person's intention. My values are honesty, transparency, fairness, and orientation to the value and impact. That's why I mentioned that I did not know what agile means before I was already agile. So I think agility, in a sense, it's very much overlap with my values and my principles in life, my moral principles. So that's why in the waterfall context, like many, many years ago, when we delivered just because we need to deliver, no matter what, doesn't matter the quality that we deliver, because we just need to deliver, because we have that kind of fixed scope, fixed time contract. I felt like there is a mismatch in my values with my moral values and principles and customer-centric orientation. So that's why when I, first of all, I found out about Agile, I think about 2000, it was about 2010, I understood, okay, this is the answer. So now I have the answer how I can map my moral values and principles with software delivery, with product delivery, and what we are actually doing. So Agile came into my mindset, into myself, probably a little bit earlier than I found out about this Agile concept.
Yeah, that's actually a very important realization that you describe, right? Like realizing that the way I work needs to be aligned with my values. And there must be a way of working that is aligned with my values. That last part is also very important. And I say this because today, many teams are still working under the same pressures you describe having felt in the early 2000s, right? It may not necessarily be fixed scope, but definitely a lot of scope with very tight deadlines, with very demanding and powerful customers that we need to answer to. And those powerful customers exert pressure, and these powerful customers can be big companies, but they can also be a very large consumer market, right? Like the consumer pressure is also on software teams, not just clients or large corporate customers. And for me, what's interesting in this is that connection of personal values and the need to align that with the way of working. Can you describe for us when you were able to make that connection? Like what was happening at the time and what triggered that connection between personal values and the ways of working?
So I think I mentioned when I moved from a bigger company to a smaller one. And once again, I just would like to clarify that doesn't mean the size of the company. That just happens that sometimes with agile principles and values, they live better into a smaller company in kind of startup way. But when I moved from a bigger company, bigger corporation to a smaller company, I felt like there is something fresh in the air. So there is like a new wave, a wave of collaboration, innovation, people like feeling transparent, people that know everything about each other. They speak the same language. They are aligned. So that kind of freedom of thinking, of innovating and putting any kind of questions, no matter what, how stupid the question is. So that was so new and so different from me. And I understand, okay, this is probably what agile mindset is. But once again, I want to clarify because I have seen companies that are big enough and they still manage to maintain that kind of agile mindset and that kind of agile value. That's not simple, but I think that's still doable. And from my point of view, it's not right to say that in big corporation agile is not living because it can live. It can live it depending how much leadership put effort in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it is a system, right? Like everything that affects the ways of working. It's the organizational structure, the culture, people's ambitions and expectations. All of that influences what actually is possible to put in place. One of the strongest chapters in your book is called "Don't Be an Agile Zombie." You describe teams that have all of the meetings. They follow everything by the book. They have the boards. They have the right people title or role titles, but nothing really changes. And kind of you describe the Scrum Master as a secretary. My own experience is that it's often also the product owner who is a secretary because they just take care of the backlog and that's it. So these days, when you go into a new organization and when you start working with teams, how do you recognize a zombie team when you start interacting with them? What are the first things that will tell you that, okay, this is that type of agile deployment, if you will?
Yeah, so probably the first thing that I will observe if I go to some of the ceremonies and I see that stand up that becomes like a status meeting and everybody is reporting to somebody. And then that's kind of, I don't know, that's kind of formal interaction between the team members or the interaction between team members and Scrum Master or product owner where people are afraid to say some of the things. People are afraid to escalate risks or assumptions because, so that's, we need to speak about good things or don't speak about them at all. And then you have that situation when you are not able to deliver and that you have that kind of watermelon project. So I think from my point of view, Agile Zombie is a team that is doing everything by the book, but the mindset is not in place, So they are just repeating the tip of the iceberg. They are repeating everything that needs to be done. They are repeating all the roles and responsibilities and ceremonies. But behind that, there is kind of fear about being wrong. There is kind of fear of being blamed. There is kind of fear of being transparent and tell the truth, no matter how big or how small this truth is. So that's kind of Agile Zombie.
So
mindset.
It's great that you talk about fear because actually one of the points you make as well in the book is that if you want to keep working waterfall, that's fine. Just call it waterfall, right? But it takes courage when we go in and start working with a team and their leadership, of course. It takes courage to bring that up. So how do you handle it personally when you go into an organization that may be talking a good talk, maybe have all of the ceremonies, all of the roles, but no substance?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, about that kind of, how we name it, putting a lipstick on a pig. So that metaphor that we used in the book, we debated a lot with Alona, with my co-author. Should we put that metaphor or not? Because it sounds very kind of direct and not very soft. And I say, okay, if we make a soft book, probably the message will not get to the people. So I would like per purpose to use that metaphor in order to trigger that kind of sentiment of, okay, something is not going right here. And yes, for sure, I'm in my client engagement, I'm not going to use that metaphor about, guys, you have a company that using that lipstick on a pig. But I like that concept, I think that was first communicated by Lisa Atkins, communicating the truth in love. So you say the truth, you have the courage to say the truth, but you say the truth with love. This means you are not saying the truth in an organization in order to blame them or to show how smart you are or to show that they are not agile. You are saying the truth with courage and with respect, because you want them to become better, because you want the organization itself to learn how to cure themselves, the organization to self-assess and to understand where they are going with that approach or with this approach. And once again, I don't have any kind of problem of organization being waterfall. I have seen organizations that are waterfall and they still have psychological safety and they deliver and they have good predictability and great team atmosphere. I don't say that with agile silver bullet. If organization deliver waterfall and they are happy about their predictability and the value that they are bringing to the market, that's okay. Just name the things how they are. Like name the things using the right word, let's say like that. So it's not right to say that you are agile if you are not agile.
Okay, so I like where you're going with this, but I have a little pushback here, which is this idea that there are certain characteristics to working in an agile versus a waterfall organization. And I know it's a spectrum. There are many different steps between agile and waterfall. It's not just, 1 and 0. But in software specifically, there are things that just don't work with waterfall. I'll just use a very basic example here to illustrate the point, which is this idea that in waterfall, there's this belief that you can learn the scope up front. You can define it before you start the project. Now, anyone who's worked in any software project, even a 2-day software project, knows that to be completely false, right? So we as software professionals also have the responsibility to put the cards on the table and say, hey, if you really want to use waterfall, let's imagine there's, psychological safety and the teams are happy and so on. But if you want to use waterfall, you need to pay, meaning really spend money.
Yes.
You need to pay a lot more for the quality and the scope that you would get otherwise. So it's perfectly okay to use waterfall, but then we need more people working in what we would call the front end of the process. So it's not enough to have a product owner and teams. You actually need to have a whole team of business analysts doing research, interviewing customers, creating reports, doing all kinds of bureaucracy before we even touch one line of code. And most organizations would immediately turn to you and say, no, we don't want that. We want to use waterfall, but we want the teams to start before we even have the requirements. So how do you handle that conflict, which is always there in software organizations?
That's interesting, Vasco. I think we are all living now uncertain times, and we can see now how our clients are moving from agile projects or time and material project into fixed time, fixed scope again. And I see this like a balance, we are going to speak about that buzzing of attractions. But I think that we have so much uncertainty now in the current world that businesses are going back to where they come from agility to waterfall, because they know they did that multiple years already. But returning back to what you just asked me, I really believe, and I have seen in my career projects that are like very, very small projects that they just do, like, for example, a real estate site for multiple clients. They don't change anything. They change just the color They change the color, they change maybe some of the menu items, and that's it. So they have like a template. For that kind of applications where we don't change a lot, you can estimate very clear what you need to do. So there is no benefit. You can still work in Agile, but there is no benefit in doing that Agile waterfall. There is no difference. Like there are not so many of these kind of projects, but still there are some projects like that. And then if we speak and extend a little bit that or horizon, and we say not IT only, if we go into other industries, I think there are a lot of industries where agility will not work, and we need to recognize that.
Yeah, I think we are just discovering where it works. I mean, many people would still argue it doesn't work in software. You just gave an example where you clearly said that maybe there's not so much added value of working in an agile way. Now, of course, every project is an individual project. All the characteristics, who is there and expectations and so on influence what kind of ways of working could apply there. The way I describe it to myself, and I would like to hear your thoughts, and maybe you address this in the book, I don't remember. I think there's a spectrum. On one side, I don't call it waterfall. I call it task-driven product development, which means that somebody needs to create the list of tasks. And how they create it, of course, we already know how it usually is done, right? Like you collect requirements, you make an architectural document, you review that, then from that you design. So you create the design documents, and then somebody kind of splits that up over the team. That would usually be a project manager. So we might call that project management waterfall style, but I call it task driven because the tasks are the things that matter. We're only doing tasks. We're not being asked to be creative. We're not being asked to be adaptable. We're just delivering tasks. And then on the other side of the spectrum, which is what we would call agile, but I don't call it agile in this spectrum. I call it value-driven product development. And on that side, what matters is the impact of what we do, right? Like, because that's what that particular organization or product requires. We focus on customer impact, so value driven. And because of that, we can't decide the tasks up front because value is always discovered. It cannot be predetermined because value is the dynamic interaction of the functionality with the customers or users that use it.
Yeah.
So is that also how you look at it, like this more task-oriented versus more value-oriented, or how do you make that distinction? Because I also, think the title of the book is actually quite important in that regard, because you don't want to go into an organization and try to make them into something they cannot be, right?
Right. And I agree with you. The value orientation should be in place all the time. I didn't cover this kind of spectrum in the book. But what I covered into the book was the difference between Agile by the book and Agile as a practical implementation, Agile, pragmatic approach on the Agile. So I'm not an Agile evangelist. I'm not a person that speak Agile, and Agile or Scrum Guide is a Bible. I'm a person that have seen how the things are working in organizations, and I know how to adapt that to making that kind of hybrid approach, if required, applying system thinking and applying Agile principles, and maybe sometimes even not Agile principles, but the things that are pragmatic and can work in that particular organization. So there was no one single Agile transformation or organizational transformation that I did in organizations that are the same. So all the time, each transformation should be tailored to organization. And that's usually not a Scrum only or Kanban only or SAFe only. That's a combination of factors that are going to work for that particular organization. So this is how I see the things. And if the organization decide a little bit to go more into that predictability into waterfall model, I don't see a problem with that.
Yeah. So in the later part of the book, and I appreciate you mentioning systems thinking, because in the later part of the book, you talk about systems thinking, you talk about the Knefin model, the iceberg model, causal loop diagrams. And I think this is a very important set of topics because, and we had the systems thinking question a few years ago here on the podcast. There's a lot of practitioners that kind of stop before they understand what this is. Maybe it's because it feels academic or theoretical or whatever, I don't know. But in the book, you and your co-author, you argue that this ability to think in systems is essential. So explain for us, why does systems thinking matter, or why should it matter for someone leading a transformation? And how do you make it practical in your work rather than just theoretical?
Yeah, good thing. So me and Alena, my co-author of that book, we tried together to make that section with system thinking as practical as possible. So we tried to give some examples. We tried to make it, to simplify it as much as possible to get this information to agile practitioner, because I know the system thinking, this is such a big topic, and there is soft system thinking and there is hard system thinking and a lot of other stuff. But still, I would like to reaffirm once again that this is an essential part. Each organization is, we need to see an organization like a life organism. So every single organism, they have like nervous system, they have digestive system, they have legs, they have hands. And if you have a pain in one of your part of your system, of your organism, other parts of the system will not feel great, right? So I think that's why we need to look at the organization as a system rather than like a list of checkboxes that we need to tick. So organizational transformation need to look at the organization as a system to understand what is happening in that part, what is happening in this part, to try to map to each other, to try to identify variables that can influence each other, links between that variables. So that's not a simple thing to do, but I think that's essential knowledge that each agile coach or organizational transformation coach need to have. So I highly recommend for that coaches or scrum masters that are not looking into the system thinking directions to start looking into that direction. And maybe to start with a simple thing like causal loop diagram. So hard system thinking, probably this is the part that is easier to understand for people that are in technology.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also talk about one of the concepts of complexity thinking or systems thinking. You reference the basin of attraction. This is the idea that a system has to pass through a point of real disruption before it can find a new stable state. Otherwise, it comes back to where it was. So how does that look like in a real organization?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think we touched base a little bit about where the world is moving on now. I think we are in a basin of attraction as an industry, but to looking a little bit closer to a real example. So I had an example in my career where we did a big agile transformation to one of our payment providers. Like we touch base about 50 plus teams, 600 people, more than 3 domains. So that was huge. That was big. And we moved them into kind of hybrid agile approach that was mapped exactly to their context, exactly to their organization. And then went extremely well. So the organizational transformation itself was about 3 or 5 years. And after that, the client stakeholders were very happy. They are going and doing interviews about our collaboration and how successful that transformation was. So that was a big, big success of that transformation. And then after that, what happened? The company was merged with another bigger payment provider. And now they are working with Safe. And that's the end of the story.
Yeah, usually is the end of the story.
Yeah, so I mean, they decided to move back into more structural approach. The first agile transformation was mostly based on less rather than on Safe. Safe is much more structural, but just because the big organization pushed their processes and tools on the smaller organization, they didn't have a choice, and they need to move. And that transformation, you can say that doesn't make sense, but still they had 5 years where they worked in another kind of process, and they were happy about that.
Absolutely. And this also establishes, I hope, the idea that transformations are not like projects. They don't have a beginning and an end. Transformation is the beginning of a process that lasts forever, right? Like, and I am myself familiar with companies that have gone between project management and agile software development several times in whatever, 10, 15 years. So transformation is something that if we don't continue to put energy into it, it will eventually settle back to what it was, which is exactly the point that you make, unless there's a disruptive point where what it was is no longer a feasible, for whatever reason, a feasible alternative. Now, systems thinking is a very wide topic. Complexity thinking and systems thinking are very wide topics. So for our listeners, where would be the entry point into systems thinking? What would you advise they start looking into first? Obviously, beyond your book, From Resistance to Resilience, and the link is in the show notes, where else do you think people could start and learn practical ways of applying these models and frameworks?
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to say to your question, yes, my book that will be the entry point, because this is a simplified version of system thinking. So we try to make it very, very clear. But another point that will be probably the book that is the fifth discipline. This is one of the most well-known book about system thinking. Less scaling framework is also advertising system thinking. So people that had some less trainings, they probably also will be easier for them to understand system thinking. But after they start with something, I would like to advise to go into that hard system thinking and to start practicing with causal loop diagram, start maybe to mapping all the parameters that they can see in the system that are influencing the system or one particular department or situation, and then to start to understand the link between that parameters. So, for example, if we have a lot of let's say, quality issues, if we have a lot of bugs in production, to start to understand this is coming only because we have problems in our technical department, or maybe this is a problem in our human resources department. Maybe it depends on how we are doing interviews, or maybe there is also a problem in the finance department, because maybe it matters how good we are training our people, what kind of certification we are doing for them. So sometimes the cause and effect is not so obvious. That's why system thinking is something like learning to understand and to see the causes in another place that is the straightaway answer to your question.
Yeah, absolutely. And causal loop diagram is such a wonderful tool because it creates very productive conversations as well. Now, in the book, you also address a topic that was all the rage in 2025. I hope it's no longer in 2026 as we record this, but who knows? You address the Agile is dead debate. Your argument is that comparing Agile with AI is like comparing apples and orchestras. I like the comparison. Can you unpack that? Because a lot of people in our audience are hearing from, their own leadership and obviously from the media that AI will replace everything, people, processes, tools, everything. So tell us a little bit, what's your take on that perspective of Agile is dead and the influence of AI in the future of Agile software development?
Yeah, great. Actually, I had an interesting comment. So one of my friends, he bought the book, he opened the book, and at the beginning of the book was Agile is dead. And then he closed the book and say, that's a wonderful, wonderful way to start a book. But I wanted to address this question just at the beginning of the book, because many people are not going to read the book because they think, why I need to read an Agile book if Agile is dead? And regarding that material or that metaphor about apples and orchestras, once again, we discussed with Alona, and Alona say, I don't get it, because apples with oranges, it's not apples with orchestras. I say, no, I want apples with orchestras because I want to show that this is not fruits. So they both are not fruits. They are something that you cannot compare. This is like you can eat apple and to play in orchestra, right? But you cannot replace your food with playing in orchestra. And you cannot play because you want food, and you cannot get food because you want to play. So there are two completely different things. Once again, Agile is a mindset. This is not a framework. You cannot replace the mindset with a tool. You can combine them. You can make Agile to work wonderfully with AI together, but you cannot replace Agile mindset with AI. So from my point of view, this is nothing to discuss here. But just because there are so many debates and discussions on the internet space, I just wanted to address that at the beginning of the book, because before even people start reading the book.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, when we think about Agile is dead, the first thing that comes to mind is, of course, at some point it used to be alive. So what does that mean? And I guess that what many people are talking about is that Agile used to be popular, right? Like there was pull, people wanted Agile. And now, as it usually happens, people have moved on and they're interested in other things. So I understand why people say Agile is that. But when we look at, from the perspective of us software professionals, when we look at the landscape of available alternatives, we see that, first of all, most companies, even if they don't call it, they are moving towards more agile ways of working, right? Like, again, talking about the spectrum, they're not necessarily getting out of the waterfall side of the spectrum, but they're moving towards the agile ways of working. Most people that enter our industry are not actually learning any other ways of developing software, right? So when we talk about agile, is that, okay, fine, it's a great way to grab some views on LinkedIn. But when we look at it from the perspective of us software professionals, I think it would be much more interesting to think about what comes next. What do you think about that, Natalia?
Yeah, I think so. And actually, Agile is dead. And there is another expression that is very well known now and used. This is about Post-Agile era. So Post-Agile era is used like post-industrial era that was used before. What I understand here, so many people are somehow offended about that expression of Post-Agile era. What Post-Agile era means actually is that Agile is not enough. So Agile is not going away. It's just Agile plus something. And I think Agile plus AI can collaborate in an amazing way. And we just don't need to push and kill each other, because actually we need to try to marry Agile together with AI, because I see that's the future of product and software development, Agile plus AI. From another perspective, what you just say, that Agile is not in trend anymore. Yes, Agile is not in trend for salespeople, for people that are doing sales. This is not in trend because AI is the new trend that they allowing them to do more sales. And from my point of view, that's just kind of marketing campaign. That's nothing more, nothing less. The people that don't understand what is Agile, now they just remove the mask and we see that they don't understand and they didn't understand before.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of possibility for us to clean up a little bit the space and to understand what people actually understand what is agility and what people did not understand what is agility, because now they don't need to have that mask anymore.
Yeah, we can finally talk about what matters in our industry without being pressured to label it in some way. I like that approach. All right, everybody, the book is From Resistance to Resilient, Practical Agile Lessons from Transformation. And Natalia is the co-author of the book. So check out the book. Link is in the show notes. And Natalia, if people want to know more about you and the work that you're doing, where should they go?
Yeah, so I just published my site today. This is nataliacurusi.com, where you can also buy the book from there. You can click on order the book. It is going to redirect you to the proper platforms where you can order the book and find out a little bit more about myself. I'm going to have a blog there as well. Then my LinkedIn profile is always open for you, so you can just ping me in private message if you would like to learn a little bit more about the book, about myself, about system thinking. And there is one more community on LinkedIn that we just published together with some of my colleagues. This is Agile Continuum. If you try to search Agile Continuum, this is a public page on LinkedIn. You are going to find that community of people. We name it Agile Continuum because we would like to keep all the Scrum Masters, Agile coaches together, especially people that struggles in the AI era or post-Agile era, let's say like that, and to share our experience, to share our knowledge, and to share our maybe some kind of AI and learning tools together. Absolutely. In the community.
And we'll put the link to all of those in the show notes to make sure that people easily find it. Natalia, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for being here with us and for being so generous with your time and your knowledge.
Thank you very much, Vasco.
Hi there, friends. Thanks for sticking around till the end of the episode. So let me tell you what's coming. On May 4th, we're running the Global Agile Summit. It will be online, and I want you there. This year, we have 4 tracks, and each one is built around real conversations with practitioners. No slides, no keynote theater, just honest interviews with people doing the work, just like you. The first track is AI in organizations, where practitioners show what actually works. No hype, just AI that makes your Monday better. Happy Monday, everybody. And then we have the people track, honest conversations about putting humans at the center of how we work and keeping them there. And third is Agile in construction. And yes, I really mean brick and mortar construction. Lean and Agile actual job sites. Field leaders removing waste, teams transforming how buildings get built. Stay tuned for what I think will be a super track on Agile in construction. And the fourth track is Agile in gaming, how game studios ship without burning out. Agile inside the creative pressure cooker. Over the years, we've had more than 12,000 participants since 2017, the time of the first summit organized with the podcast. And this year, we're making it easier than ever to join. You can register for free and get access to the summit sessions live during the event week. That's May 4th to May 6th. Or you can grab the practitioner pass and get immediate access to last year's keynotes from Jürgen Appelo, Gojko Adzic, and Mirete Kangas. Right now, even before the summit starts. So grab your practitioner pass and start learning today. Head on over to bit.ly/Global Agile 26. That's 26, the numerals 2 and 6. Sign up and I'll see you on May the 4th. And one more time, here we go, bit.ly/Global Agile 26. All lowercase, all one word, and 26, that's the numeral 2 and the numeral 6. I'll see you on the conference floor.